Thank you so very much, and thank you all for being here. I know we're standing between you and a happy hour somewhere, so it is truly appreciated. My name is Dom Williams. I'm a program administrator for TechP. You'll learn a little bit more about that later. This is Teamwork Makes the Dream Work, connecting industry and community to drive talent solutions. So I want to start off by thanking our panel for joining us and exploring ways industry and community can build talent pipelines in our tech community. I'd like to start off this conversation by having each panelist briefly share their current role in their organization.
First. Hi, everyone. My name is Christine Gallagher. I am the director of the Center for Professional Development at the University of Denver. CPD is housed within University of Denver's University College, which is the continuing professional studies arm of the university. So University College offers online master's degrees, bachelor's completion. We're really serving a unique subset of adult learners. And within my unit, we're running a large chunk of the university's non-credit programming, including but not limited to our coaching programming and our tech boot camps, which is what we'll talk a little bit more about today.
I'm Robin Veit. I lead the infrastructure team at Ardent Mills. Ardent Mills is a flour and grain company. We're the largest provider of flour in North America, so you probably ate something that we contributed to today, most likely. And then I also lead our Earn and Learn program at Ardent Mills, which is mainly what I'm going to be talking about today.
My name is Pete Bry, and I'm with IBM. You may have heard of us. I work on generative AI, Watson. You probably have heard of Watson, cloud technologies, and cybersecurity technologies at IBM. I'm a global product executive, and I get to work around the world with customers and sales teams and engineering teams. It's a really exciting job.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Magyar, and I'm with the American Institutes for Research. And we are a very large nonprofit working in doing research in healthcare, education, and workforce development. I lead a project with the American Institutes of Research under a government contract to grow and expand tech apprenticeships across the country. Our strategic partner is CompTIA, and together we're working to launch much needed tech apprenticeships from coast to coast, and look forward to telling you more about that later. Thank you.
Guess that leaves me. Chris Berthium, I'm the project manager for the Technology Employment Colorado Partnership. We're a statewide tech training and workforce development program that's run out of Denver Workforce Development. And I get the joy of partnering with all these amazing folks up here to expand our talent pipeline in tech and advanced manufacturing across the state of Colorado.
Well, thank y'all. As y'all can see, we have a great panel here set up for y'all all across industry and community. Also want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Of course, our title sponsor, Amazon. Dito, actually the agency that Chris and I work for, are sponsoring the growth track. So if you've been at those, that is sponsored by our agency. And of course, again, Emerge in the back supporting and sponsoring the People's track. So sweet. I'll keep this up here for later just so you can kind of keep referencing knowing who you're being talked to. So let's get into it with, what are some examples of how you're driving collaboration? Chris, let's start with you. What role does the city, state, and just government in general have in playing in exploring talent pipelines? And how does TechP partner with people like AIR, DU, and other partners?
Well, primarily we're funders. So we have received very large state grants, federal grants. Excuse me. So TechP 2.0 is a $7.4 million grant that, again, we disperse across the state of Colorado through strategic partnerships to help folks overcome the financial barrier of training, particularly in the tech space, which tends to be a lot more expensive than some other training programs. And so the University of Denver and AIR are some of our strategic partners on the ground that really help us to financially support job seekers and businesses that are looking to expand their talent pipeline.
And Christine, I know you've kind of recently stepped into the space, or not so recently, but have been working with public partners. Can you tell us what that's like working with public partners and workforce specifically?
Yeah, I think so. For us, it's an important space that I think a little later than we'd like to have stepped in, right? I think we'll talk a little bit more later about the ROI of that, but I think there's a lot to be said from a business standpoint about connecting education opportunities with the opportunities to fund. But I also think for us, it's really been a mission alignment that education looks different than it looked yesterday and last year and pre-pandemic certainly and 10 years before. And I think for us, we're really working to figure out, well, the community is where folks are working, the community is where our learners are coming from, and so how do we plug into the existing supports that those community members already have to build sort of a better landscape for folks. And I think our partnership has been really beautiful because we've had an opportunity to learn a lot about like where are students coming from and who are they, what are their needs that are unique, how are workforce counselors on the ground meeting with them and hearing about those needs in a way that we maybe as the training provider are not hearing about, and adjust our supports of folks because of that. So I think our partnership is really mission driven and based on teaching to the learners that we actually have in our community.
Awesome, thank you. Now, Pete, you might have mentioned this already, but you were a Tech P 1.0 participant, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I want to hear about your experience as a past Tech P participant. You're the head of global products at IBM, right? So tell me a bit about how it was to be enrolled, go through training, and then kind of through the placement and what that was like for you.
Absolutely. And, there's a few key things I want the audience to understand here. And, the technology industry is like, you create your own path. And there's tons of opportunity out there right now. The question you have to ask yourself is, what do you want to do? What do you want to become? And for me, my very first day, and I worked for a company in Northern Colorado right out of college, and I was a printed circuit board designer, and I told myself, my very first day of work, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. And, I set forth a plan of what I wanted to do. And I told myself, I want to work more with customers. I want to go out and meet people and do those kinds of things. And it took me a long time. It took me, 6-7 years to gradually move into different roles, to move into those kinds of positions. But then, the unexpected happens, which happens to most people in the tech industry. You get laid off, right? And I found myself, back in 2017 being laid off. And what do? And I asked myself those same questions. What do I want to do? Given all my experience I've had, how can I augment that into something and parlay it into something that I really feel, good about? And I worked with a Tech P program, and it actually secured a grant, and I went back and I got training class, like deep training on cybersecurity. And I got a certification in, being a certified ethical hacker. Certified ethical hacker is the key words there. And yes, I was in Las Vegas last week when the MGM was attacked. It was not fun, let me tell you. It was not me, no. It happened before I got there. And I also got a second certification, a Security Plus certification. And the program really supported me all the way through, achieving those. But I got to be honest with you got to have the drive and the commitment. Those programs are hard. And a lot of these technology programs, they're hard. You have to put in a lot of work. You have to learn a lot of new skills. But if you're dedicated and motivated, these programs will support you all the way through. And, as a proof point of where I've been able to go since that program, it's only blossomed my career in the tech industry. I've worked at a couple of different companies, and that's one of the other piece of advice I would give you is you might think, and if you've ever read the book "Who Moved My Cheese," it's a short read, but it's a really good read, and it's very pertinent to the space. Is like your cheese is going to get moved many times in the tech industry, and you just have to resign yourself to that fact. My cheese has been moved probably a dozen times, and sometimes I wonder what I'm chasing, but I digress. But like my position now within IBM, I'm having the most fun I've ever had in my entire career, and Tech P has been a part of enabling that by adding, the cybersecurity skills to my palette. And that's a little bit about who I am and what Tech P did for me. But for you, you have to think about these kinds of things and what do you want? And, also recognize that change is going to come. We live in a world where change is like coming at us very rapid, and it's going to hit your career. And so you need to think about those kinds of things.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Good plug for Tech P. So then I kind of want to get on to, for Chris and Chris, Chris squared, if you would. What are some of the benefits industry might expect to have when engaging with programs like Tech P or engaging with a partner like AIR to set up a tech apprenticeship?
Yeah, I think, in terms of apprenticeship, I mean, we all, for years have seen, not enough tech workers, not enough cyber workers. In the past, the ceiling to get into tech occupations and careers was to get that 4-year degree. And if you look at the statistics, and I don't have the stats, but the higher education is not putting out enough graduates to really fill all of the tech roles. And with apprenticeship, there is no requirement for any post-secondary degrees, right? Organizations are looking, we're looking for apprentices that have the right attitude and aptitude to get into tech, but don't have an on-ramp into technology. And that's the beauty of apprenticeships. When I first got into this apprenticeship space about 7 years ago after being in tech, I'm like, there aren't apprenticeships in tech, They're welders, they're carpenters, they're plumbers. But apprenticeships in advanced manufacturing, in technology, have just exploded, the last number of years. The investment in apprenticeships by the federal government, the DOL, to launch these programs has exploded in the last couple of years. And the beauty of apprenticeship is that it is a 100-plus-year-old structure, but with leveraging tech apprenticeships, and that's what we focus in on, organizations who leverage this apprenticeship model open themselves up to really an untapped pool of diverse talent. Because again, you don't have to have that degree to get into it. Well, how do individuals leverage apprenticeship to get into these tech occupations? Apprenticeship is a structured training approach to gain competencies for a specific role. Apprenticeships are made up of training, and in the apprenticeship world, it's called RTI. I won't use the apprenticeship terms, but classroom training, on-the-job training with mentorship. And so, individuals can get into these tech occupations with companies that sponsor apprenticeships, with organizations that sponsor apprenticeships. Our role under the project that we are running for the Department of Labor is to work with employers directly, but more importantly, our strategy is to leverage community colleges, business member organizations, workforce development organizations, nonprofits, communities who want to set up apprenticeships to help the employers and help their community get apprentices into these tech roles. And the beauty of it also is the earn and learn model. Individuals who are, working in whatever job they're in now, they need to earn a living. How can I switch jobs, right? I've got to be able to feed my family. Well, apprenticeships do require employment. It is a job, and it's an entry-level job. Organizations, companies have the opportunity to define what their apprenticeship looks like under defined apprenticeship standards, what the training is, when the training takes place, and the on-the-job work or training that takes place for that individual to gain the competencies to actually complete their apprenticeship. And the collaboration that I've seen in my experience in this at American Institute for Research, and previously with the software company in Boulder, Colorado, where we launched a software development apprenticeship, is funding that helped us as a small company pay for the training. We used TechP 1.0 so we could bring more individuals into these apprenticeship programs. So really, apprenticeship is really a very much still an untapped tool and resource in the tech community. All of the support, the dollars, the infrastructure is there. We just really need industry to embrace tech apprenticeships to help fill the skill gaps that exist in the industry today.
Why did I let you go first? Yeah, I want to pay for all that. So I think, when we say what can people expect, there's this sort of misconceptions about working with the government, misconceptions about access to funding that might have quote unquote strings attached. And I think really the expectation is we want to break all of that down for folks, especially small businesses, especially job seekers looking to change careers. As Pete mentioned, and no, I didn't plug him to say this, so many resources, right? TechP is just one of the hundreds of millions of dollars that are floating around to scale up your business, to skill up your workforce. And we really, this panel is indicative of what we're trying to do is eliminate silos and competition and work together that help benefit the industry as a whole. So I think really what you can expect from us is not only the funding, as folks have mentioned, because we have money, but also to connect you to the DUs of the world and the Ardent Mills for employment and IBM for both training and employment, and then AIR for that apprenticeship piece, which then future-proofs your workforce in a lot of ways. And so we're really the convener of all of that. With a checkbook. So
I want to add something to what both of these guys have said. You know, IBM has done some research with our customers, you know, who are, some of them are on the cutting edge, but a lot aren't. And the research that they found is 40% of jobs are going to change, and they're going to change very quickly, like in the next 1 to 2 years. You know, artificial intelligence, and you hear this drumbeat constantly, artificial intelligence, automation are going to require workers to be reskilled. So what does that mean? I mean, I think for all of you, it means this is a rich market to be able to step into, you know, because of that change that's happening in these big organizations. But it's also, you know, back to what I said earlier too, that the pace of change has picked up significantly. And so you kind of have to be open to retraining yourself, learning new technologies on a continual basis in your career. IBM has committed, you know, over the next 3 years that we're going to bring additional 2 million, you know, employees into the workplace trained on these technologies, working with these kinds of exact programs because they recognize the need. It's a big challenge out there, but it's a big opportunity for all of us.
And I feel like another thing you can expect when you work with somebody, I mean, what we have come to expect when we work with TechP, and I think we hope industry knows to expect, is really that whether the training is through an apprenticeship model or a big company like IBM or like a slightly less big entity like University of Denver or anything in between, that the folks that are coming out of that training have a support system behind them that is very, very robust. And I think that whether you're reskilling or new skilling or like next skilling, skilling, if you're skilling in some way, all the skills, that I think, you know, when we're talking to employers, we're talking about time to market, that like this student is going to be ready in 3 to 6 months to do their best work for you, not 2 to 4 years. And like, I'm not going to knock the 4-year degree. Obviously I work for a 4-year institution. I have a 4-year degree, but I think, you know, that being able to say to an employer, this person's going to have the skills, the exact skills you want, because we reverse engineered our curriculum, our apprenticeship, our training program based on exactly what your job posting says, so we could get the students to take this program because they want the job, that you can expect to get students who not only bring in those exact skills and, like, yes, might bring a varied and different and richly diverse previous life experience, but that they're bringing a varied and different and richly diverse previous life experience. That you have a person who has worked maybe a whole career before they got to this point, or has worked a very different career, or has served tables for like 10 years and is just really sick of it, right? But there's a lot of learning from that experience, and that's who you get when you hire a student and when you go through a training and when you partner with any one of us, I think, on this model and this programming, is you get someone who is really motivated, who has a really beautiful support system in the government, in an apprenticeship, from a nonprofit, from a university, and you get someone who's bringing their whole self to work and is excited to stay there and learn more.
Yeah, completely. And I really love to hear that. And I want to kind of tap into you, Robin, and ask you, what has been your experience kind of standing up one of these programs? I know you've worked with some nonprofits, some public partners. I'd love to hear about your experience setting up these programs. And Pete, feel free to chime in on the IBM side of things. What is it like there? How are they standing up programs there? Have you stand up to yourself? So
we decided right before COVID to stand up our own new pipeline to tap into talent. And there was a variety of reasons that we were doing it. One is that we didn't want to compete with other people in Denver in tech. Like when you're hiring somebody, we didn't want to steal people from other companies. We want to collaborate. We want to learn from each other. And so we wanted kind of a new pipeline. We also wanted to increase diversity and increase the diversity that we were seeing in our team. And so we kind of brainstormed on how to do it. We didn't ask for any help, which we should have. We've found some good help along the way, but we kind of grew it ourselves. And it's an apprenticeship-like program. And the struggles with that is that we had to get senior leadership buy-in. We had to fund it ourselves. We also had to figure out, even though I lead the program, I can't train all of these people. I don't have the technical skills. I don't have the time. I have a full-time job. So you have to get buy-in from the whole department to get behind this program. And so we did that. We got people really excited about the program. We're in our second cohort now of it. And what our program essentially is we call it Earn and Learn. And we do partner with some folks to help us find candidates today. Our first cohort, we partnered with Activate Work, and they helped us with bringing us people that had kind of some training in IT, but this was their first IT job. And what we found is the benefits of that is that they are bringing this, they've all worked careers before this. So they're bringing that diverse experience. One fun thing is that you get to teach them what to do if somebody's squatting in a conference room when you have it booked, because being a house painter, you never had to deal with that. But being a house painter, you know all about safety, you know all about organizing, you know all about customer service. And so I don't have to teach those things that I would argue are a lot harder to teach. And so now we're learning, now that we're in our second cohort, we're talking about it a lot more, doing things like this and partnering with new partners so that we can access different pipelines to find these folks that are looking for careers in IT, because it's really hard to post a job that just basically says, are you curious about IT? And so, because that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for somebody that aligns with our company values and that just wants to learn about IT. So it's been really fun to partner with other programs to find these folks that are ready for that career change.
Pete, anything to add?
Yeah, so it's been really interesting to be at IBM, and I've only been there for just over a year. But the programs, that they offer, really run the gamut. And I'll give you a good example of this. This past summer, I was involved in a mentoring program, and it was targeted at people who are trying to get into the technology industry. They might be in college, they might not be, but and it was. For me, it was very simple to answer some of the basic questions about, well, what's it like being in the tech world, and what are the jobs like, and what skills do I need? Oh my gosh, are computers going to take away, our jobs in the future? And answering those kinds of questions, I love that IBM gives us that opportunity as employees to work with people, and that's available to everybody. There's other programs that we have, and it's a little bit like, Christine was talking about following people through their life cycle, of going down this path of, hey, I might want to do this, and then talking more to them about it and encouraging them. And even, we have internship programs that we can bring people in, and you can try things out for a little bit. And in fact, that was part of the mentoring program that I took part of this summer. But, we've also are standing behind a lot of our commitments though too, in terms of, I mentioned earlier about, 2 million new people, need to come into the workforce with these specific artificial intelligence skills in the next 3 years, and for IBM, that's a very big problem to be able to solve. And so, there's a lot of facets to this. There's not one particular thing that's going to, answer any of the questions or any of the problems. It's, a multitude of different things. But, I guess for me personally, I enjoy being a part of that because obviously I like, helping people in their careers, helping them on board, but also I've been around the block and I've seen a few things, some good, some not so good. And, I hope that experience can help people.
Yeah, thank you all both. I really appreciate that industry perspective on what it really takes to stand up one of these programs and your journey through Ardent Mills and what IBM is doing. So I want to hear from our community folks. How do you support a business like Ardent Mills, or even a large business like IBM, or maybe one of the founders in the room who are starting really small? What is your kind of place in that? And how do you support these folks with resources?
Everyone's looking at me with the money, right?
Not all at once.
Money works. Yeah, I mean, I think that's just it, right? It's breaking down those barriers for both job seekers, for businesses, and even organizations, right? So TechP, I mentioned 7.4 million, 3 million of that in 2 years has already gone to training. And that's 54, 55 training providers throughout the community. So as a resource, we're not just training folks, we're not just helping businesses find talent, but we're actually keeping some companies in business, right? Because their business is to train others. And so at the end of the day, it really comes down to we have the resources. TechP is built into Denver Workforce Development, which is part of DEDO, Denver Economic Development. So we have peers all across the city in our organization that can help businesses.
Michael Beavis in the back, Stephanie Garnico with our global team.
I wasn't going to call anyone out, but hi, guys. But yeah, I mean, so just access to a lot of different resources. We don't pretend to be the experts in the room. We want to connect you to the experts. And if the experts say, hey, we can do this, but it's going to cost this, we want to help you overcome that barrier. People tell us all the time they're short talent. The 4-year degree versus a credential program is a huge conversation. I joke with Christine, even within the 4 walls of universities, some of their competition is on their own campus. But what we have is the latitude and the flexibility to talk to a business and say, well, what do you need? What do you need now? What do you need in 3 years, 5 years? Workforce as a whole tends to be very reactive. The economy goes south and the federal government throws out money and says, here, fix the economy. And so we do that, but we're also trying to look at, Peter's mentioned AI, sound like a plug for Watson, but AI is a huge buzzword. Quantum computing, Michael and I were just talking about quantum computing is a huge buzzword. These are all just evolutions of existing technology, software development, cybersecurity, data analytics. So we're still focusing on training that workforce so that as a company, when you come to us and say, well, I need a data person, Google launches a new language. Well, that's great for Google, but if that becomes mainstream, where's that tech talent pipeline going to come from? We'll be prepared to do that because we can teach people in Carbon or R or Python or whatever your language of choice is. So I don't know if I ever answered your question directly, but I'm not sure.
No,
but yeah, I mean, just it's again, the takeaway is that we want to build a community that people can feed from. And it's not just us saying, hey, we have this program. If you want to plug in, that's great. It's really, this is our program. Our colleagues are in the front row from Workforce and DEDO's in the back. And it's really just about building a community that businesses and job seekers can plug into and out of. Because as Pete said, the rate of change, and I do have the numbers, currently is about 6 months. And the other number, and Christine hasn't tossed it out yet, but 90% of jobs in the next year will require digital skills of some sort. And yeah, the number I think has gone up to almost 60% of current jobs will need reskilling in the next 3 to 5 years, like total reskilling. So again, not being reactive, we're trying to be very proactive, and that's what we're trying to continue building.
Appreciate it. No, that was great. They covered it all. Christine, Chris, you want anything? No worries.
Well, I'll follow that journey. You talked to, I think, Dom, in your question was, how to set up these programs and such, right? So in terms of, the project that we're in partnership with CompTIA on, CompTIA Apprenticeships for Tech, we don't we don't have our own apprenticeship program. We help organizations establish their apprenticeship programs. Robin mentioned Activate Work. Activate Work is one of our partners here in Colorado. So an organization like Activate Work or a community college or another nonprofit who wants to stand up an apprenticeship program, well, where do I start? Well, what the project I'm on brings to bear from your taxpayer dollars is the expertise, the partnership, the resources to work with organizations to create tech apprenticeships. It can be overwhelming potentially when you're looking at launching a government program and the paperwork and everything else, and we've smoothed out all of that process from coast to coast. CompTIA, our partner, we've established, not to get too apprenticeship techie, but national guideline standards for 5 entry-level occupations. And what that means is these national guideline standards for apprenticeship have been approved by the Office of Apprenticeship. So an organization like Activate Work that wants to start a tech support specialist program, we've done a majority of the work already to help them launch that program. And then we'll guide organizations through the process of registering their standards, getting their standards approved, work with them on all of the process to find apprentice candidates, find a training provider, how do I mentor, really from soup to nuts. That is the role that we play. And all of the services that we provide to the partners that we support are at no cost to those partners, right? So it's that collaboration. He's got the money for training. We've got the no-cost services and expertise to start these programs. And that is how, these organizations really need to, braid together to launch these apprenticeships. We also have access to funds to help organizations start these apprenticeship programs. They're called incentive funds, but we have the expertise across all of the states to help organizations find out what funding is available in their state, their county, their city to, again, help launch these programs.
And I think what I'm hearing Chris say is really this, is navigate, right? The experience of this partnership and standing up these programs is that whether you're in the room because you're looking to be employed or trying to get employed or trying to employ or hoping one day you'll be in a position of doing a lot of employing, that this is a lot to navigate, right? At the university, on the for-credit side, my colleagues in the floor below are really helping adult learners navigate so many options. Education is overwhelming, and education's overwhelming when it's a 6-week program too, and then when it's a tech program and you're not sure, do I do the CompTIA Security Plus or do I do this security, I don't know them, security basic, or do I do a 24-week boot camp, or do I do a 10-week training program specifically for cloud development, or I think it's a lot for you to navigate as a person who might be wanting to do that training. It's a lot for you to help an employee navigate, or to even understand sort of who you need to employ and what they've navigated. And I think we've seen a really immediate impact. I wrote my numbers down, but I think just in building this partnership with, when a student, when a learner, when an earner learns about an opportunity and has a person to walk beside them and help them navigate that, whether that's to navigate how to pay for it or just, is this the right thing for me? Is this on the right trajectory? Like Pete asking that question of what do you want? What do you want to do? What are the steps to get there? That when we see folks actually have support in navigating that, we see them do that. And if they don't have support, and many of our students, I think that we've served through Tech PE, have never been to college, or it's been a long time since they've engaged in education. So what we're really trying to do is make it so that the university feels like a place for them, that we want folks to say, yes, University of Denver is this beautiful, prestigious organization, and it's a place for you because we have learning for you. And I do want to share, so in 2019, we served 5 students through the Workforce Development Program. In 2020, we served 2. In 2021, we served 3. And at the end, at the beginning of quarter 4 in 2022, we had a meeting with all of our workforce partners and talked about how we navigate these programs and support students in navigating. We talked to the people that actually do the supporting. We served 40 students, most of them in the fourth quarter. And then this year, so far, we've served 52 students, and we're on track for 70, so that's a 75% increase. And that's, I mean, one, it's profit for us, right? Let's not pretend that that's not what's happening, but also that's 75, what did I say, 70 learners as compared to 5 years ago when it was 2 learners, 5 learners, no learners. We had the programming then. We were still doing that. We were still putting out folks who were educated in data analytics and software development and cybersecurity, but now we're putting out the folks who have this like deep navigation system that someone's with them on, and we're connecting them to employers who like know who we are and know who our students are and what they're learning. And I think that's really, you can't do it all by yourself, whether you're a startup or looking to work for a startup or starting up or whatever it is. I think we could never have done that, and I could go on and on about like the numbers and the ROI. Somehow, I don't know, that's very off character for me, but I think that we couldn't have done it by ourselves. And honestly, from a program standpoint, we are really excited to be building new technology opportunities that are different than boot camps for folks with other partners based on the feedback that Chris and Dom and the team give us about like, yes, this is something that that learners want. This is something that employers are hiring, that there's a deep need for. And we just couldn't have ever built those things or navigated those things without that support. So I think, that everyone in this space is able to provide a navigation point, whether it's for an employer or a learner or some combination of, everyone I think is probably both, right? So.
Thank you. That actually is a perfect segue into my next question. Outside, oh my gosh. Did we plan this? No. Outside of job placement and gaining talent, what do you hope to gain from a collaborative approach of building talent pipelines? And this is for all of y'all, kind of where you are in the ecosystem. I'd love to hear about that from you.
I'll go first. So there's been a lot of benefits to us kind of taking this approach. One of them is it has increased diversity in Ardent Mills and our IT team. So we've done several initiatives to kind of focus over that on the last few years, but we're now at 50% women in IT. Our IT leadership team is 50% women, and we've increased diversity overall in other areas as well. And it's kind of the snowball effect, when people show up for interviews and they see somebody that looks like them and that, that they can identify with, it just kind of snowballs into this great, wonderful thing. And we've got the culture to support that, where we really value diversity and embrace it. And that's what makes it work. So that's been a benefit of this program, along with some other things that we've done. It's increased the Ardent Mills brand. I get to come talk about my great company and the great things that we're doing, and people don't think, oh, Ardent Mills flour company, that sounds lame. We have, I'll admit that I thought that when I applied. I was, yeah. But I got to meet the people and learn the technology that we're using. I mean, we're doing a lot of cutting edge stuff. People don't want to get into milling, so we're doing automation, we're doing AI, we're doing IoT, so we're doing a lot of cool things. And so we get to come and talk about that, and it increases our brand in the community. And then the impact on the staff is that it really keeps them engaged. They get to take these people that are coming into this organization, that are excited about IT, that want to learn from their expertise, and that really helps with their engagement. So they get to train this person, and then that person starts helping them out, and then they've got more time to train. And so that also kind of snowball affects bringing these folks in at these entry-level positions. We give them a mentor. That gives the teammates a mentoring opportunity to also learn that if they're trying to increase their leadership skills. So there's just been a ton of benefits. And then we get to partner with more people too, because to one of the points earlier too, We tried to somewhat do it by ourselves, and it's hard. But getting that person, supporting them through this program, especially outside support, has been really nice, because they may not be comfortable coming to me if they're struggling with something, and that type of thing. But having an outside mentor that they can talk to, having outside training resources that they can tap into, has really helped increase the success rate in our cohort. So those are just some of those benefits, and I love it. It's really helped. I moved job roles, and when I moved job roles, the first thing that I said to my boss was, "I'm taking the Earn and Learn program with me. You understand that, right?" And he said, "Of course, I know you are," because it really helps with my engagement of just getting to invest in these people and see them succeed and see them grow and seeing what they teach me with their past experience.
Yeah, I think I love that point about what it's done for you too, right? Like we feel so excited to come to work every day because we care about the work we're doing. I know that sounds like the worst, right? But it's just but I think, there's a lot going on in our agencies and organizations, and lots of people kind of breathing on you to deliver certain things and outcomes, and hiring is a stress, and training is a stress, and funding is a stress. And I think being able to just what you do every day. I think we sort of have two hats in my unit. We kind of have our employer-centric hat, and then what you're really asking about, which is the learner-centric hat, outside of the training, outside of feeding the industry. Chris and I say this a lot to each other and to Dom and to the team, which is really a rising tide lifts all boats, right? That a better community better people in the community make a better community, and better paid people in the community make a better community. Families that eat in the community make a better community. And so I think, we're really talking for our programming about folks who are coming in and not making a living wage and are coming out and making a family sustaining wage, and are not only getting family sustaining wage dollars, but are also getting family sustaining benefits like healthcare they've never had before, or a 401k they've never had before, FSA opportunities, dependent care opportunities, all of this stuff that comes with work when you're really ingrained in the community, that doesn't come with trying to find your footing and making $30,000, $40,000, hoping you or a partner can pay for it, hoping you can mash things together. And and I think that community impact really can't be undersold. That I think I want employers to hire talent because my students are the talent, and if the employers hire my students can pay their bills, right? I think that's the end of the day for me and for the university, for us, really what drives us beyond just feeding the needs of the tech and the non-tech. I think Chris talked about this, right? That 90%, that when we talk about tech talent, I'm talking about the school district. I'm talking about the bank. I'm talking about that one nonprofit that has one person that does literally all the tech things, and they're the only person, and they're applying for the grants, and they're pulling the data. You need that person to be talented to drive improvement. And, if that person gets that grant, how many people does that organization touch in the community? So I think it's beyond just sort of the big tech space, but that there's just a real impact. I know that's I'm a social worker, you can see from my title, but but I think that impact in the community is employers are always trying to impact the community. How can we help? Well, let's help together through training so that person is not just better right now, but they're better for the whole life of their career.
Dom, you asked, what do we want out of this collaboration? And, for us and the role that we're working in right now, I think the number one goal for us is to get employers to embrace the apprenticeship model because it works. We've established approximately 50 programs across the country right now to create tech apprenticeships for employers. In this area, and really talking to our partners and at conferences across the country, tech apprenticeships are still slow to be embraced by industry. And I just don't get it. Working in that space for 30 plus years, they're dying on the vine for talent. And through apprenticeship and what it brings to bear, and the opportunity it gives individuals, in my previous job, I've witnessed that. I mean, we've some of the best talent that we put through our software development apprenticeship program. When we ask them about their previous job or experience, sleeping on mom's couch, playing video games, delivering pizzas at night and working as a barista in the morning. And it was some of the most incredible talent that we were able to get into our apprenticeship that are now, starting off as software development apprentices and following them on LinkedIn, software developers, senior software developers. And, as Christine mentioned, the opportunity that it gives an individual to really make a difference in their family life, in themselves, their family, their community. Statistics show that for every dollar spent, on apprenticeship returns $28 in benefit to the community. For employers, the stats are for every dollar invested in apprenticeship returns $1.47 in ROI. So, the infrastructure is there, everything's there. And for our project, our goal is to have 750 apprentices hired by the organizations that we served. We had a great year this year. We had almost 900 apprentices registered under our programs. But again, that's still just barely touching the opportunity that exists out there for employers and for those who want to get into these tech careers.
Thank you all so much. As you can tell, panelists are very passionate, and I really appreciate everything they have to say. We are actually close to 5 minutes left on the panelist side of things, and we'll open the floor up. So I'll skip a couple questions, but kind of amalgamate them. I want to hear from our industry folks. What's some emerging talent or emerging talent pipelines that you're developing or that you see kind of coming down the pipeline in your industry or in your company? And then also tell us about just what do you believe some of the barriers are for industry to get involved with public partners like TechP, AIR, or go to a training provider like DU and say, hey, we want to get some education for our folks?
So some of the things that we're kind of expanding in Ardent Mills is actually data is a big one. So the flour industry, the grain industry is a very old industry, as you can imagine. A lot of the decisions have been made by these folks that have been in the industry their whole lives, and they know what they're doing. And you give that person some data, some facts, and wow. And we have seen an increase in our profits as we've gotten a hold of our data and really put it in a format that these folks can use and consume and make better decisions on. So that's an area that we've been focusing on. We've also been focusing on product management. I mean, these are two simple kind of things that have been around for a while, but one of the things that we're really focusing on is understanding a lot of our processes from end to end. Not going all in on a particular technology or a particular tool, but understanding how folks are using technology in our company and having experts in those space. And so that's an area that we're heavily investing in as well. And that skill set isn't necessarily a traditional technical skill set that requires somebody that's a strategic thinker, that's willing to dig in, that's curious, and that type of thing. So those are kind of two unique places that I think we're expanding and really digging in. So I'll let you answer before the second part.
Okay. And thanks for the plug for IBM.
Yeah.
We talk about data all the time. And as I'm sitting here listening to, the other panelists talk about this, I mean, the one thing that comes to mind is, and you already said it, diversity. And it's not diversity on the surface of that word. It's diversity of certainly, where you come from, all that stuff, but also like your beliefs or your thoughts about things, because we really value not debating for debating's sake, but bringing different viewpoints to the table. And it's very interesting that, the time I've been at IBM, I get to work with a lot of different people. I have some of my cohorts who have not just one, but multiple PhDs. And you might think, and I immediately was like, wow, this person like walks on water. Like, I can't talk to you. And no, absolutely not. Like, those people are like the most conversant and want to hear what you have to say, want to hear your opinions. And so as we look at, building the pipeline, and, I think it was you, Chris, that raised the question about, do you need that 4-year degree or is certification enough? And I don't know that I necessarily know the answer to that. I do know that, the change that the industry is going through, there's absolutely a place for certification types of programs. But to your point, too, there's a certain set of skills that are like longer term longevity types of skills that are going to help you deal with whatever change gets thrown at you, whether it's generative AI today or something else tomorrow. So as we look at building those pipelines, and it kind of ties into everything I was talking about earlier in terms of some of the mentoring programs and some of the onboarding programs. IBM looks a lot for that diversity component.
And the second part of that question, and everybody can feel free to answer this in your own way if you'd like to. What is some of that barrier to kind of the 4-year degree? We're not getting the 4-year degree, I should say. Let me rephrase that. What is the barrier preventing industry sometimes, maybe not IBM, but some of the other players from setting up an apprenticeship model, from taking more folks on with certifications instead of 4-year degrees? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
What we've seen is when we talk about creating an apprenticeship, it's not about creating a job within an organization, within an employer, but it's about creating a career path. And supporting the IT industry, running staffing companies and such, I think the pressures that exist are the pressures of tomorrow. Is I've got these 10 openings to fill, and I need mid to senior level people. How am I going to get them? And where we've found success, and our partners have found success, when you find somebody with an organization who looks at apprenticeship as a strategy. It's a talent development strategy. It may not fill that need that I need to hire for tomorrow, but if I start building this pipeline of apprentices that are going to come in a year's time, like you mentioned, Pete, they're going to have more skills, they're going to do the jobs of someone else, and they're going to be the mentors, and you bring in another class. I always talk that apprenticeship, isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. So, I think you need to look at these programs from an employer perspective to say, may not solve my immediate needs, but if I don't do it now, where am I going to be 12 months, 24 months, 36 months from now? So I think it's finding that forward thinker who's going to, create a strategy for these workforce development opportunities.
I think you said it earlier, Mags. It's a mathematical certainty that 4-year college, for whatever reason, right? Enrollment is at an all-time low. Graduation rates are lower, right? So there's less people entering the workforce from that pipeline. So again, not picking sides, it's just a mathematical certainty, right? There will be less people to fill these jobs. So we need to have creative ways to upskill them, next skill them, reskill them, throwing all my buzzwords out in one sentence. But that's the reality. And not just new people in the workforce, as we've discussed a couple of different times, reskilling existing people in the workforce, which again is back to your earlier question about what I hope to get out of this kind of collaboration is just more collaboration, more opportunities, a greater understanding of where, I don't want to say the industry, because as Christine pointed out, tech jobs are not all in the tech industry. I joke with my team that 3-4 years ago, the largest cybersecurity force in Denver actually worked for Chipotle before they relocated to California. And so, again, just we have to open the doors for more people to get access to this type of training, to get access to these types of careers. I think tech apprenticeships are huge and are a great opportunity. As Chris mentioned, it's a 150-year-old institution. If you take away all the politics and the gangster stuff, then there's still an intermediary that's helping businesses obtain talent in a structured, meaningful way. And Chris happens to be one of those intermediaries. So I just think it's the answer to your question is the barrier is probably just outdated thinking in a lot of ways, and just sort of this acceptance that yeah, it'll be fine. We'll figure it out. But the data doesn't lie. So.
And I think we just had this conversation today with a partner that there isn't that there is and there isn't data. There's data about the need, but I think there's less data. We're not collecting data right now well on what happens when our learners, the folks who are the product of our training opportunities, go into the workforce, and the impact. Like, everything's very ad hoc. You hear like the hero story of this great student who came with this different background or didn't do this 4-year school or whatever, and so we don't have data to set. Now, I gotta be honest, I don't think we have data generally about like what happens when a 4-year degree student goes and takes, it's like, oh, all the 4-year degree students are doing this great impact. But there's more, right? There's history there. I think Chris Magyar would disagree, because he's like, there's history in the apprenticeship piece, yes. But I think that there's like this inherent trust that we are trying really hard to build with industry, to say like, this is talent you can trust. And we just need you to trust it and give it a chance. And like, if you want to collect data on how this one person performs as compared to like your whole workforce, that's great. And we would love to have it. I think that you'll find that our students are more specially trained in the things that you need. I also think you'll find they're sometimes more appreciative or excited about the opportunity. But I think like there's a risk associated with something you don't know. And I think it's baffling to a lot of us that tech is the entity, the industry that's like, I'm not sure about that new thing, because we're like, let's do AI, but not sure about that new training program. But I think there's a trust, and I think these kind of conversations and us coming to spaces is really a chance for us to say, like, we're the people behind the training programs and the funding and the apprenticeships, and so like that you can trust that, because we trust that. We're putting a lot of time and energy and money into it for the trust.
I appreciate that. Anybody else before we move on? All right. Well, we're going to go to one final question. I'm going to cap it 30 seconds or less for this one. What is something it's okay. It's okay. I love it. I think it's been a great conversation. Just share something you want the audience to take away from today, whether you said it already or you haven't had a chance to say it. Maybe I'll give you a second if you need, but something you want the audience to take away from today.
I think that when we're thinking about diversity, which is on everyone's mind, about a diverse pool of people working for you and working with you, that what I want folks to take away is that means more than like how we've classically thought about it. That diversity of experience is really, really, really important. And I think sometimes, like Robin has said, can be more important sometimes. So for me, that's it.
I think one of the things that to focus on, you're in a role where you can really guide the culture of the company that you're building, and culture is so important. And our culture is focused on the people, and our values are focused on the people. And I think that's what makes programs like this work. I think that's what helps increase diversity, and I think that's what's helping us be a successful company. So, just really taking hold of that culture, and we live and die by our values, and we talk about them often, and we talk about them when we're making decisions, and that's something that you can really lead for your company.
I think the thing that I want to say is, it's a little bit back to the whole 4-year degree versus certification. And as I sit here thinking about it, maybe the answer is both. I don't know. We can certainly debate that, but I can give you my personal perspective. I had a computer science degree, bachelor's, and electrical and computer engineering degree. And I went to DU and got my MBA, but I still found myself without a job at one point in my career. And yes, those skills that I learned through all those various different degrees helped me a lot, but I worked with Tech P, and I learned how to become a certified ethical hacker and get my Security Plus certification. And I actually got a job before I even completed the certification. So I guess the takeaway I want to give everybody is, what I said earlier about being willing to pivot, figuring out where you want to go in your career and how do you augment that. Life is going to throw changes at you that you're not going to be able to anticipate, and having a good idea of what you want is, I think, really important.
I think the one thing for industry to realize after attending a conference back in D.C. About the future of the workforce, is that we're at a point in history where there's unprecedented spending of your tax dollars to change the way individuals get trained and skilled for the new opportunities that exist, not only today but in the future. If you look at the CHIPS Act and other things, if we miss the ball coming in now with all of the dollars spent, and if industry doesn't embrace, these new programs and these new ways of thinking from these investment dollars, it's a little scary to think where we're going to be 5 to 10 years from now. So, industry is the change catalyst. We're driving that change, but we need industry to open their eyes and really embrace these new programs.
Well said. I think the takeaway I want folks to have is to understand that regardless of what city you live in, you're here in Denver Startup Week. Denver government, in my opinion, is unlike any other. So regardless of where you're at in your employment or business journey, we have a program or resources available to you to help support you. And it's not like other experiences, right? We kind of pride ourselves on working with a lot of community partners. We've mentioned the different resources and the funding. And again, even just within our own economic development department, we operate globally right down to locally, right? So we have this really wide span of influence, and again, the resources to support that. So don't be afraid, whatever previous misconceptions you might have about government. We are genuinely here to help. And as you can see, we get to work with some amazing and passionate professionals every day.
Well, thank you. Can we get our panelists a round of applause, please? And give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you so much for sticking with us. I know this is during happy hour time. I'm going to get me a drink after this too. Really appreciate it. We pushed a little past, so if you have questions, feel free to come up to us. I'll transfer over to my contact information. If you want to get in touch with any of the panelists or myself, feel free. There's some QR codes around also that you can scan to give feedback. We'd love to hear your thoughts and everything like that. We have many sessions going on for DIDO. Hire a Refugee is going on Thursday, 4:30 at the Jake Jab Center right here with our own Logan Grasstite. We had the Global Visitors Welcome with our global team in the back earlier Monday. Had a great showing. So just thank you again, and please know that all the people up here are open resource. Denver Economic Development, the city and county of Denver is an open resource, and I hope you have a good rest of your time at Denver Startup Week.